looking forward to sharing some Revit tips and tricks with you guys. So basically, big picture, what we're planning and wanting to do here is in this webinar is cover some time-saving tips and tricks, talk about a little bit of workflow to make it easier and smoother for you. Also look at some of the parametric families, shared parameters, central files, basically how to create some materials and convert some things from AutoCAD to use in Revit. And ultimately is just to help you become more efficient. I know we have a lot of different folks on the webinar today, and that skill level is probably quite across the board. So some of these might be like, wow, I never heard of that, or some of these might be like, hey, I'm an expert in that area. So really it's just to share some good information, some tips and tricks for you. And I kind of boiled it down to really 8 tips. And I say for 2018 because the 8 and the 8 sounded good, but really some of these are for multiple versions of Revit that are out there. But it's again to get you, hey, this is going to help me out, make me a little faster. And earlier we mentioned about, or maybe Mark mentioned about doing some polling questions. So we have a couple polling questions. So I'm actually going to turn this back over to Mark, and we just want to get some feedback from you all, some interaction. So Mark, I'm going to put it back to you for just a minute to go with the polling question.
Fantastic. Hey, thank you very much. Sure. So let me pull up our first poll question. And so here you should now be able to see it on your screen. Again, so we're going to ask again, how would you rate your Revit expertise? And so we give you 4 different answers there. And great to see, and again, where we're at as far as the audience, who we have, and so we can tailor it the best we could. We have quite a few votes. We're just going to give a few moments here to close, to let you get your vote in. Ooh, getting quite a few votes in. Great. So it looks like we're almost leveled off as far as people. So I'm going to close that out here. So give you the last one chance. Ooh, man, a whole bunch of people are voting. I love it. So I'm going to close this out here, and we will show the results. So we can see here again, we have some new people, but again, a lot of some experience and some experience. And then we have a few who that are the experts. It's going to be hard to teach a few things, but that's these up to the challenge. So again, glad you voted. Thank you very much. And I'll turn it back over to Z.
Awesome, fantastic. That's great to see. There's some newbie folks out there, and there's some well-seasoned veterans out there as well. I'm waiting for that to kind of kick off so we can see. There we go. So let's start this off. Let's talk about some of these tips. The first tip I want to talk about is basically updating products. It used to be, people say, hey, is your product up to date? There was the old kind of way of hunting for updates. Either somebody would tell you, hey, there's a new version or a new hot fix or something out there for the product, or you just search, is there an update for Revit, whatever version that might be. Well, the neat thing they introduced here in 2017 and 2018 is this Autodesk desktop app. It basically ships with the installation, and it installs this little application. Let's have a screen grab of it here, and really starts to define and explain to you what you have installed, what's available for you, that kind of thing. So if you once you get in there and you click on some stuff, it'll show you over here in this kind of ribbon, this vertical ribbon, what you have installed. So I have AutoCAD and Revit installed, so it's listing those out, and it's saying, hey, there's some updates to this DB link, the database link for Revit. So I could go ahead and run through those, update it, get that installed, make sure it's nice and current. Or up here where the sign in is, there's your Autodesk account, you could sign into this, and basically then it would start to say, here's what products you have available to you as part of your subscription and your package or whatever. It's listing out like I have Inventor and that kind of stuff. I don't have Inventor installed, but it says I have access to it. So that's kind of cool, because a lot of people end up calling us saying, well, hey, what do we own? What does my company have? I don't know for sure. Can I get Navisworks or something? So this lists out what it all is, install it, and then if you look here, this is talking about a mobile app for AutoCAD. It says I can access that, but really it's showing me, hey, you have like 25 different products you could potentially install. So that's kind of neat. Once I'm logged in again, I can go to this other tab where it shows me just my specific products. But under the settings, which I thought was cool, it'll actually give me the choice to pick where do you want to download this to. Is it maybe to a shared file location? Do you want to be notified about that? And then, or do you just want me to automatically install that, which I think is really cool. If you choose the notification piece, it'll actually pop up, in your lower right corner, hey, there's 5 updates available for you, and go ahead and run those and install those. So I really like this tool, and it's sort of new, and some people don't know about it. I actually had installed my Revit and didn't really even know about it, and I had to do a little search for it, and I had a little icon and everything there for me. So very helpful, because we have a lot of folks who will either call us about technical support and say, hey, this and this doesn't work, and one of our first responses are, is your product up to date? So maybe that's like, this is tip 1, that's tip 1.1. So make sure your product's up to date, because that might resolve the the problem or the question that you're trying to deal with or whatever. Now, if you're using an earlier version of Revit for 2016, for example, you can download that little installer little app, because it was developed after the 2016 was shipped. But you can go to autodesk.com/ADA-installer. So that'll just download it for you. You have a little installation, and you can put that on your system. So good stuff there. All right, our next tip. I want to talk a little bit about parametric families. And I know, like I said, there's a lot of folks in here. Some people have never heard of it. Some people have never touched it. And the folks who said they can teach a class are probably experts, in this as well. So hang in there. Let me just kind of go through this and share a little bit about it. But basically, I want to talk about what it is, adding some dimensional parameters, which is going to really define the parametric piece, and then what we call flexing the model. Some people miss that step and then don't know why it is not working. So, for example, in a family, the parametric really means it has some sizes that it can change to, some different components happen to it. There's parameters to adjust the size. So like this, I put in a desk. Now, if you just modeled a extrusion desk, it wouldn't do anything, right? It wouldn't change sizes. It wouldn't adjust. Over here on the side, it wouldn't have any specific sizes. But if we go in and open that family, kind of look under the hood a little bit, and go to a ground floor view, you can see some of these dimensions, but they're kind of different looking dimensions, but those are what are controlling the actual parameters. So we would just put in a regular old dimension, drop it in, boom, boom. Once we place that dimension and we click on the dimension, so if I click on it, up in the top in our ribbon, you'll see this label dimension. You're like, okay, what does that mean? So this is sort of the tip, if you will, to make some things functional and parametric and really have some functionality to it. We can take those dimensions and convert them into these, have these labels attached to them. So in that label, you might say none if you're first going into it. This already has some depth, height, width sort of things associated with, has some sizes with it. So we would just click on that none and say, whatever the size is, I want to call it depth, and I want to give it a 2'6" depth or something. So you put something in there that makes sense. It could be D, whatever is the name itself. So that'll start to define it. So those dimensions, those out to out, for example, those are saying I'm grabbing the edge of either the model or reference planes, depending on how you want to create it. Reference planes are kind of good. That would allow us to then adjust the size of that model. Now, to know this actually worked, that's where this flex the model piece comes into play. So what flexing the model allows us to do is to actually see if the physical extrusion, the object itself, has actually moved or adjusted. So in the type parameters up in the family itself, we click on these family types, and it'll open up our dialog box and actually show us those parameters associated with the dimensions that we had created. So here, depth, height, width. So it's actually listing those out. Now, if we change this number, 2'6" to 3 feet or 5 feet or whatever it is, our model on our screen, where this dialog box is sitting over top of, will adjust the size of it. If it didn't, something's broken. You need to go back and adjust some things. But what's nice about this, in taking it to the next next step, if you will, is these type names. So if I know I have some standard sized objects, you know, in this case it's 60 by 30, maybe it's a 72 by 36 or something. What I can do is actually flex the model, change these numbers to the 7 feet and the 5 feet or whatever it is, and then come up here saying I want to make a new type, right? I want to make a new type, and then put in that number 72 by 36 or 5 feet or whatever it is, and say apply and OK. That will actually make that type drop down option in Revit. So when I place that family into a project, instead of me just randomly being able to type in this depth option here, a random size, I've made it predetermined sizes. I've actually established that these are different type sizes, you know, small, medium, large, whatever it may be, that I can then quickly switch those to. So again, a couple different things for a parametric family. By no means is this going to replace a really deep dive sort of training class, if you will, but a lot of people have been kind of scared off and venturing into the waters for adding this parametric pieces. But hopefully this is kind of brushing across the surface, if you will, and looking at also making some of those type names. So that's sort of our second tip related to parametric families. All right, our third tip is using shared parameters, or just shared parameters in general. And again, some people have never used those before and are asking, why would I want to use them, or even what are they? And then how do I add information to them? Okay, so when I was looking to share some information about parameters to you, no pun intended, shared, whatever, there is a lot of different type of parameters out there. Obviously, we were just looking at sort of the type parameter information for a family, which is the first one listed here, family parameters, but there's project parameters, shared parameters, and global parameters. We're going to focus in and talk about shared parameters, but I will mention we've done some webinars on global parameters in the past, and I know we have a couple more, another one at least coming up before the end of the year. Those are kind of unique, and you might want to, if you haven't ventured into those, that would be something to look at as well. But like I said, I want to share a little bit about shared parameters. So if we go into Revit, into the Manage tab, there's a shared parameters, and basically let's just talk a little bit about what are they, because people are like, okay, I just learned about general parameters, as far as sizes and that kind of stuff. These parameters really get into more of the data information, serial numbers maybe, or something like that. So let's talk about what they are. The most exciting thing, if you will, with shared parameters is they can be used by multiple families in multiple project files. So that dimension thing I was just messing with earlier in the family itself, that's just for that one, right? If we're using shared parameters, that can go into multiple different things. So let's say it's some kind of serial number identification or something unique that needs to be visible and seen within multiple families. I don't want to go into each one and do it. This actually pushes it out into those. And if it's another project, could be multiple buildings within a complex or campus or something that I want to have this shared parameter. So that's one advantage, or two advantages of it. Also, that they appear in schedules and tags. There are other parameters that will only show up in a schedule, but you can't tag them, which is kind of a bummer, because maybe you want to show them both. So going through this process, you might want to think, well, why would I use a shared parameter? This might be why. So I can schedule and tag it at the same time. So a couple kind of prep things to think about. Also, this information can be exported out to a ODBC database to deal with it in a more of a database kind of scenario. And then ultimately, in big picture, this is a text file that's outside of Revit. Okay, and that's kind of where the information is housed. It's not within Revit, but that file is being fed out and read by several of the different families and projects themselves. But a caveat, you don't really want to be editing that or hacking it, as you will. You'd still go through Revit, and it's going up there and adding that information to it so we can use it effectively. So maybe an example would be a number of different elements in a family that I want to have scheduled or something, and that's harder because they're shared across or something. This makes it easier. Or a room occupancy in a room tag. So that's something that's sort of unique and specialized, but then the room information somehow, maybe that ties with a door or exit with or something. Those shared parameters would be a good example for that. Or it's something with the material, some custom parameter with that. Maybe it's the glossiness or the pile height or something along those lines. I'm sure there's other specific reasons you'd want to use them as well. So, I kind of touched a little bit about, why would I want to use them? I explained a couple things, but one great thing is that it's just a uniform source of truth. I'm not re-entering, these different pieces of information in different families or copying out to another project. I can have sort of this ultimate source of truth file that's feeding out into multiple projects, which is great when you think about, a large organization. There's some kind of firm standards we want to push through and apply, and this is the way we want to do it. This is a great way to specifically share that. Also, it's a centralized location, so it's not necessarily on somebody's computer or tucked away or something. It's in a shared location where it can access all that information. All right, so how would we add this? How would you basically set this up? And this is sort of the high level pass, if you will. But basically, we would be in a family or be in an object or something and want to add these shared parameters. And so we find the shared parameters button and click on it, and it's going to bring up this dialog box basically saying, hey, this is how you set up these parameters. One of the first things you'd want to do is actually have to create one if there's none available at all. But if your other project or that other building I mentioned is now going to be using the shared parameters already created, we can just browse out to where that's located and path to that and start using and pull it in. So there really isn't any work potentially to do on that side. But if we wanted to add a parameter, we do have a choice here to get into some groups. So maybe it's a furniture group, or it's a code related group, or whatever it may be. We can categorize those in here just for easier filtering and finding that information. But then ultimately we'd say, hey, I need to make a new parameter. So when I click on that, it brings up the dialog box and say, okay, great, let's make this new parameter. So give it a specific name. I mentioned about that ID number, kind of serial number, if you will. And then we can put it in the related discipline. Maybe it's an architecture, an MEP, just a common discipline, and the type of parameter. It's an integer, it's a different value, it's a length or something, area, whatever it may be. We can categorize it to be in there as well. So that will go through, okay kind of thing, and make that specific shared parameter. And I want to just open up basically the shared parameter file that I was using as a reference in putting this all together, and it builds this all out for you. So you can see in here, it actually, making this entire file. This is extremely short. These can be very long, but here's that ID number we talked about. It's in the length group. It's visible, yes, and so this is what then would be pulled into other families. So maybe it's an ID for furniture, which is in a different group than what a ID number for a door might be, or just some other piece of equipment, but we can push that out to multiple things. So just sort of an example of how that might be used, in general for you. So some good stuff. Now, I mentioned we had some polls, kind of keep you guys accountable here and kind of interactive. So we got our second poll. I'm going to turn it over to Mark again, just to get some questions, some feedback from you all.
Hey, welcome back. Thank you. Hey, doing a great job so far. So just a reminder, there is the questions pane. So if you do have any questions during the presentation, make sure to type those in. But let me launch the next poll here. So you should see that on your screen. Okay, which area do you have the biggest challenge with Revit? And so we've got a number of different things here. We gave you some choices. Again, we also have that other category. And if you do choose other, if you could let us know via the questions pane what your biggest challenges, that'd be fantastic. Appreciate that information. So we got a number of people voting, but we want to keep it open and give you all a chance to participate and let us know what you're having biggest challenge for. So again, we can potentially address that in a future webinar. So again, we appreciate your feedback on this. Still got some people voting here, so we're going to hold it open a few moments here. And you do have to apologize. I think last time I forgot to share the results, so this time I'm going to make sure I share the results. So we got most people voted, so I'm going to close that out. And now I'm going to share that. So you can see the majority of people, almost a majority of people, have challenge with families. And then second, as you see, shared parameters, and then again, a smaller percentage with materials and central file, and then 16% with other. Again, reminder, let us know what challenges you have, and also any questions that you have, type those now into your questions pane. Again, thank you for participating. Now back to you, Z.
Awesome, thanks, Mark. Yeah, families can be a real challenge, and you know, that's why we talk about them. That's why we have classes on them, and to really you know, to dive into there. So just kind of waiting for this to switch back so I can show my screen here. There we go. All right, so if you saw on that poll question, it actually listed out a couple of these topics that we're going to get into. So maybe this will help those other percentage of folks who said, hey, central file is a challenge for me, or materials are a challenge for you, for me, or something. So we're gonna talk about those again. This is a little tip, and maybe this tip is what's going to help you get over that hurdle with them. But we're going to talk about some central file stuff as backing up, synchronization, restoring them, and then also something called a workshare monitor. And again, knowing that there's a wide variety of experience levels in here, we wanted to share some of these things with you. So one thing is, you know, the backing up, you know, the central file, even a local file, when you're backing up, you you hit you have something called my project.rvt, right? And you hit, you know, save or sync and all this other stuff, and it makes this, you know, .001 backup, which is a full live backup, right? And you do, you know, you go about your business, you make another save, and you know, 002, right? Do another save, do your thing, backup 003. Well, by default, when you hit now the next backup, of course, it's going to be 004. But what happens, and some people don't realize this, is that it drops off that very first backup. So the 001 would be deleted, and it again, this is by default. You can change this and do some other stuff, but there's usually 3 live backups of your project that you're working on. And this could be central, this could be local. This even applies to regular, you know, Revit as well. But these are your backup files. They're full-size backups, right? They're full-size files. You can actually open them directly. But again, most people don't realize that one drops off. Now, what we recommend, what we tell folks is, if you know you've done some major design change thing or whatever, you may want to consider going to where your project is saved and creating a zip file of that. So maybe under the 004 file, it was super great, and I'm just going to right click and say zip this or archive it, or maybe even pull it offline to somewhere else, because as you remember, I said it'll eventually get dropped off. If I go to, you know, save 5, 6, 7, 8, it's going to eventually get rid of this 004 save I have, but that may have been important. I don't want to lose it. So either pulling it off as a zip file or pulling it off as a into a different folder, an archive folder, that's a great way to go back, right? To pull from a backup, or to have as a kind of timestamp, if you will, to really pull from that. Because, you know, architects don't usually change your mind, and but you never know, things happen and you have to go revert back to something, or you went down a path to design some great canopy or something else and then said, oh no, we don't have the budget, we got to pull back. It's a lot easier maybe to get that timestamp file out and just go from there, instead of having to undo a bunch of things. So just a little piece about the backups. Now, when we look at some other components of the central file, like, you know, even creating them, the syncing, we're going to kind of go through this little story here, if you will, and restoring them, and some other workshare monitor pieces. But basically, in Revit, you know, I'm in a file, I want to really look at, you know, first of all, you got to create these work sets, right? You know, and I get a lot of people saying, well, when do I create these work sets? When should I do it? and there's not a, you know, a 25% set or a, you know, first submittal or whatever it may be. Basically, when somebody else needs to work on the project with you, that's the time to set it up. I wouldn't do it before that, because then you're just creating busy work for yourself. So really, when somebody else is coming on the team other than just one person, that's when you should set it up. That's sort of the golden rule. And that could be you're 95% done with the project, or it might be, you know, you're halfway through it, or who knows. So that you have to then set that up. So you'd go through this process. So we'd say, hey, I want to create a work set, and you hit on the little work sets button there, and it's going to bring up our dialog box saying, great, you know, we're ready to start collaborating. You want to have this work set within your network, or are we going to do this out in the cloud? The cloud discussion is kind of a whole another kind of component, but basically we're saying we want multiple people to work on this. So yeah, let's split this thing apart. When we do that, and again, I'm pointing out some just sort of tips and tricks, you know, within this. You know, there's a more of a walkthrough process that we do when we do custom classes and training and stuff to really hands-on experience this sort of stuff. But when we create that, there are some things you want to make sure you do first, you know, before you just are kind of off and running. One of those is to establish a couple different work sets or different sort of divisions or breaking your part of your building. So, you know, maybe it's I'm breaking things apart by the exterior wall or interior walls. Maybe it's doors. Maybe it's by system or zones, or, you know, phase 1, phase 2, whatever it may be. We divide those things up, and then the unfun part of all this is going around selecting all those objects and assigning them to the specific work sets via properties. So that's not as fun as a process, if you will. But once we do that, and we've created this file, we've enabled work sets, and this is where kind of people get messed up, is we need to save this as that master central kind of, you know, tip of the pyramid file that's going to kind of govern everything. And like I said, this is kind of just the tips of it, tips and tricks, if you will. There's walking through it if you've never done it before, but maybe this will help make it a little bit easier. But we need to save that this file out as that central file. So basically, I'm saving it as basically the first time, and as a central file. And I actually just put in central at the end of it in all caps. Some people say master, some people say, you know, top file, do not delete, but we really recommend just saying central, right? And because we've enabled work set, it knows that this is the tip of the pyramid, the governing file to control and run everything. Now, ideally, you would close this file out then, or relinquish the work set control, so you're not in charge of it, and really probably never have to reopen this again. It's sort of the recommendation, or you definitely don't want to work within this file. Is sort of the golden rule, because you're going to mess up other people who are working in it. But, and I'll talk a little bit about making a local file here in a minute. But one thing I think is neat in here, and again, you might have been using Revit for a while. If you don't kind of explore and look around, there's actually some neat things. Maybe this is like the 0.2, 0.3, you know, tip in here, is displaying or showing. Remember those work sets I created, exterior, interior, doors, walls, that kind of stuff? We can actually click the little button down here at the bottom. It looks like just 3 little colored balls or shapes down here, and say, show me what these different work sets are based off of color. So here's my interior walls, they're all blue, and the exterior walls are this, you know, purple color or whatever. So I can visually just sort of quickly see what work sets are going to be on what, or what I might be responsible for. I'm going to be responsible for all the blue stuff, okay? And then Rick is going to be responsible for all the exterior stuff. So that kind of scenario. But as I mentioned, you know, we have this central file. It's the master file. We don't really want to deal or work or run in it. But when you first open up, you know, Revit after you've created that central file, there's a little dialog box down at the bottom. Let me see if I can go back a slide, because it actually, I think I had that in there. Down here at the bottom, it says create a new local. Okay, so after I've created that central file, remember I said close it and don't really ever open it up again. This is a way to create your copy of it. And, you know, I always sort of describe the central file with the local copy or your personal copy as like a kite on a string. You know, there's the central is the string with the master, and the kite is like the local, and they're connected, right? But you don't really need to get into one versus the other. So we would say create that local file right, as we go in there, and it'll actually give it a unique name. Okay, so here it says central. It automatically puts my username as the local file. Okay, and you can debate or decide if you want to turn off that central or whatever, but now I have my local copy. That's what you should be using and should be opening and running with going forward. But you know, things happen and things don't always go the way they should, so we need to sometimes you know, fix breakups, which I'm going to get into in here in a second. But ultimately, when we make changes to our file, we're running in our local file, we move a wall, we make an adjustment, we need to then synchronize that. We need to communicate that to that central file, right? We need to synchronize it with central. So I moved a wall, I moved a door that was, you know, in my purple walls here. Well, I want to share that with everybody. I want to let Rick know that I have updates because he's working on some other stuff. So we say synchronize with that central. Brings up our dialog box saying, hey, here's where your central file is located. You know, a couple different options. I could put a comment in here saying I moved the walls or whatever. I don't think anybody really does that, but you can definitely communicate that to that. That'll push those changes up to central, up to the central file, and then be accessible for everybody else to download and to go from there. Now, I mentioned about backups or hiccups or mistakes or problems, because there's this thing that happens every once in a while. A central file goes corrupt, or your local file goes corrupt, or there's just problems, right? They're just, oh, we just ran into issues and just something's not working right. And we get these calls from people, right? They're like, this isn't working right. So we can go to this little restore from backup, right? It's under this collaborate ribbon panel. So I need to restore from backup, and basically you need to go find, path out where your central file is, and it's either going to be in a, you know, that folder you created or wherever you put on your project, and you'll be able to select that file, pull it up, and that will now like repopulate or overtake as the central file. Some people go and delete the old one and replace this one in here, but there is a process and a procedure to go through and restore a backup, you know, central model and put it back in place, because that central, that model, the tip of the pyramid, it's needed for all those local copies to run great. Now there's some kind of undocumented off record sort of things where people promote their local copy up, and that becomes a new central file. It just gets a little more tricky, if you will, but there is a process and a procedure to do that. Now, one of the neat pieces in here is this WorkShare monitor, and I got to point out that this is free because you own Revit, or it's a subscription benefit, if you will. But the WorkShare monitor will let you know who else is in your file, who else is looking at things, who else is syncing, if you will. So this is a little dialog box that can sit off to the side, different monitor off in a corner, and tell you, hey, Michael's in here, Aziz's in here, Rick's in here, you know, Mark is in here, whatever, and it'll say, you know, it'll show a little progress bar saying, hey, he's syncing. Well, hey, great, that must be something important. I'm going to go sync my stuff too. But there's some other helpful tools in here, almost like a system, well, it's called system performance, and it tells you, like, if you're like, man, my computer seems so slow, or I save it so doggy or whatever, this will actually give you a little heartbeat pulse of what's going on in your model and save time. Another thing I like about this WorkShare monitor is the idea of, you see down here at the bottom, editing requests or notifications. Basically in Revit, if I go back to that slide where I said I got the purple or the blue or whatever, and let's say somebody else is trying to move, they want to move my wall over because they're going to adjust this exterior door. Well, they're in charge of the purple stuff, but that blue wall is mine. I have control over it. So through this WorkShare monitor tool, they can actually submit a request. Actually, when they move it in the model, it'll bring up it'll say, do you want to inform the person who's doing this? But you can actually look at your editing requests in here, and it'll actually tell you what's in here, and you can approve or deny it. You can see grant or deny, sort of grayed out down here at the bottom. But that's a way to kind of all work together in the same sandbox, because I might be fine with somebody moving my wall over, but I might deny it just to say, hey, I need to have a conversation with you. Why are you doing this? Because my room needs to be a certain square footage. So it's a way to kind of put some checks and balances in place just to make sure everybody's working, communicating, and I'm allowing that change to be had. And as a side note, sort of point something tip or whatever, if you're the only one in the project and nobody has any other work sets checked out, you can basically borrow those sets and do your editing and changing. And there's just more level of management in here if it's just you, but that you can just work as one person and borrow those work sets and do some different things that you want to. Okay, moving along. So our next tip is talking about some creating and then sharing some different material. So I kind of broke it into this kind of 3-piece components: the location of it, the creation of it, and then the transfer of it, of the materials themselves. So location is really going to be, where do you want it? So if I'm creating a custom material, I want to put it somewhere that other folks on my project are going to be able to access it. So it needs to be in a shared location or in a server location. Your example, it's on the X drive, custom material, whatever. It could be just within the project itself, or maybe it's a company standard material location. So here's an example. I got a wall, it's brick. I don't want it to be brick. We're trying to match it against some existing stone that's out on a project site. We're building another building. So, what do we do? We want to switch this out for one thing. But in addition to that, I need to have a custom image. And, people are like, well, okay, how do I get that brick? How do I get that stone pattern? And you can do one of two things. You can take a picture of it with your phone, with your digital camera. Doesn't necessarily specifically matter, and it will read or save, or you can save it to whatever file type. You see JPEG, PNG, TIFF, bitmap, a bunch of different things. So we can save it or have it as any kind of file type. I've had a lot of luck just going out online and saying, hey, I need a brick or stone pattern, and there's plenty of just images, without getting into a huge just discussion, because I could just talk about this all the rest of our time. Is it needs to be straight on. You need to be very careful about what they call a repeat pattern. So you might take that photo, but you might have to go into Photoshop and tweak it a little bit. And here's what I mean is, on this image, if you look at the left edge to the right edge, like see the portion of this stone here, well, it picks up that part that was cut off over here. That's called a repeat. So imagine this like a checkerboard. The black and the red or black and the white boxes, when they line up against each other, this edge picks up over here in its continuation. So you might have to go in Photoshop and do some kind of jaggedy line, or just if you want the matching to be dead on, okay? And that's actually a class in and of itself, right? But to make it look right. So capturing the image is easy, saving the image is easy, using it and applying it is easy, but is making that match perfect, and that's the key. So there might be some additional photo editing, but I don't want you to be scared off by that. You just have to, trial and error, right? You just have to work on where that match line is. Okay, so file types. Okay, so on our wall, if I go into our wall and I look at, what is this thing built of? What is that brick material face? It's going to bring up my material browser associated to that wall. And on here, it actually shows the image, the PNG standard Revit image that's on here. Well, if I click on that, it opens up this browser and basically the material library in Revit and says, here it is. But we can path that to a different folder, to a different location. Remember I said that custom Revit materials or something? Here's that stone wall image I had captured and created as a JPEG. Say, okay, great, I want to apply that, okay? And now you see stone wall JPEG is applied. It actually shows me a little graphic here of it. Well, if I click on that, it actually brings up the little editor. And if you know that this stone is a certain size and a certain look or whatever, here's a way to scale that and adjust that. You can see the sizes. So you can adjust and move and do some kind of XYZ sort of lateral movements, if you will, to get that in the size and location you need. So if you took the image and it's like a 1 inch or 1 inch by 1 inch or a foot by foot, you might want to scale that up. One other thing, and I'm not going to get into too much, is this relief pattern is basically the black and white that's going to help give you depth. Okay, that's another whole conversation. But again, I'm trying to just give you the tips like here, boom, boom, boom. This is some quick and good type of stuff. Now I said okay with all that stuff, and it basically applied that material, that custom material to my wall. Awesome, looks great, right? We're successful. Now that's just in this one project, is just here. How do I like get that out and share that with another project, you know, or want to reuse it somewhere else, or maybe somebody made one, I want to reuse it. So basically we can transfer it. We can use the literal transfer project standards, you know, under the manage tab, and say I need to, you know, transfer that thing out. Now without having to take everything possible, right? Because you still might take your wall, you might actually just copy paste your wall, but you want to make sure that material is going with it. We can just come in here, say check none, and then select material, say yes, I want to send that over, and there we go. It sends that to a specific project. You have to have your other project open, you know, with the one that has the material in it, and then your new one you're going to. That's a little side note caveat, but that's a way we can create a material, do some custom editing, share it out. Again, good, quick little tips. Now, next tip, AutoCAD and Revit, converting some AutoCAD stuff to use in Revit. How can we do that? Well, we want to, you know, the purpose of it, we want to reuse a CAD detail. We're going to W block it out, which is a, you know, AutoCAD term, and then I want to, you know, make a drafting view of that. So let's sort of discuss and talk about that a little bit. So here, you know, basically in AutoCAD, I got a detail, just a 2D flat regular detail, and I want to use that in Revit, right? So this might be in a whole sheet, a whole drawing of other stuff. That's what I was saying about the W block. We want to make it its own separate individual file, or W block, world block, right? So you know, AutoCAD might be a whole nother discussion talking point, but basically we want to pull just that detail out by selecting the objects, picking a certain point, and giving it a unique name. I'm just calling it Foundation 01 because that's what it is. It's a foundation detail. And you know, you've seen these drawings, they got just hundreds of details and stuff, and you just need just that one. Even if you're going to do a whole bunch of them, it's going to make sense down the road here why you'd want to do that. Okay, so I'll make it out as its own drawing, and we're sort of done really in AutoCAD. You may want to purge, audit, all that fun stuff too, but now we can jump back over to Revit and say, okay, now I need to get this thing in here, and we need to create a drafting view. So up here in our Revit, we're going to actually create a drafting view, and it's going to pull up what's the name of it, what's the scale of it. You know, we have to just set that up first. Maybe you already have one created. So once we create that, now we can say, I need to bring in this AutoCAD detail. Now, if you've done this before, you may be seeing there's two different options. I'm just going to brush across them quickly. One is I can link in, excuse me, a CAD file, or I can import it. Very distinct reasons why you do one versus the other. My biggest thing is, and my tip, if you will, the 6.2, 6.3 tip is I like to potentially link a CAD detail in. That way, if I have somebody on my team who doesn't maybe know Revit, or is maybe still efficient or quick in AutoCAD, they can go back out to AutoCAD, adjust that detail in CAD, save it, and then it'll update here in Revit. It's totally cool. But you might want to import it if you're really just like, I'm severing the tie. It's going to actually import the detail into Revit as just lines, and I can actually manipulate and totally do a whole bunch of stuff with those lines. But again, sort of different veins of thought, if you will, but very valid, very useful on both scenarios. Okay, so basically I'm gonna say, let's say we're just gonna link it. I want to link it in. You find where it's located. There's some settings down here in the bottom. The biggest one to me is just change it to black and white. We want it going in origin to origin. That's where we talk about picking a point. But it's going to then bring that into my drafting view within Revit, and there it is. Looks great. It looks exactly like it did in CAD, right? It's in my project, right? Fantastic. Now, if we decide that we want to find out a little bit more about this, and this is you know, under what they call query. So here's our query button. I click on that and it says, okay, great, here's the dialog box. If I start selecting some things, like I pick on text, like hey, you know, what layer is that? I don't want to see that. I want to get rid of it. I want to turn it off, whatever it may be. This dialog box will tell me, hey, that's text. It's on this specific layer. Awesome. Well, let me just hide it. And then this one, ooh, I can delete it. Let me just get rid of it altogether, which is kind of cool. So maybe I just say hide in view. Bam, it takes it off, just like you're turning off a layer back in old school AutoCAD. But I don't want to see it because I'm going to, do my own thing with that. So that's cool. So I still have some level of control, right? Which is awesome. But what's important is I want to be able to reference this drafting view detail in my project, right? Otherwise I make a reference bubble and what do I point that to, right? So if I got a wall section up here and I'm saying, hey, I want to make a call out. When I click on the call out tool, a lot of people miss this. They just kind of zip past it, or they don't realize that this is in here. Is up in the modify call out, when you click on the call out tool, it says, okay, what do you want to reference? And there's a checkbox that says reference other view. Awesome. And here, this is referencing my drafting one view. That's what it was called when we brought it in. I can say reference that other view, and then I can place my bubble on this section in Revit. And then when we click on that link, it'll actually open up my drafting view of that AutoCAD file in Revit. And then the referencing works and everything. It does put on like I think by default it's sim or typical or something like that. But it's a way of keeping your project coordinated. And then I can also go to another section, another area, another building and say, hey, reference another view. You maybe have done it that way before, but again, this is all just helpful tips. Like, how can I be better? How can I be more efficient? These are sort of the top things that people come back to us and struggle with. So we got one more poll for you, asking some more questions. And so Mark, I'm gonna let you take that and get some feedback from the group here.
Will do. Hey, we're almost running out of time, so I'll make this poll real quick. So here's another question. Should be able to see that on your screen. Again, just curious as to how much training you've had and how you have got it or how you received it. So, getting the numbers here. So, I'm going to try to close this one out. I know we're getting close and we got a number of tips yet to go. I'm not sure how Z's going to do it. So, I'm going to close this out real quickly here and then share that. So let's share that out here. So you can see there's a number of, actually across the spectrum. We got a variety of different people here, from self-taught to classes. And so Z, I'm gonna hide this poll and turn it back to you.
Okay, fantastic. I will try to go faster on my last couple tips. Those other ones were good and I wanted to spend some time talking about them. This seventh tip, excuse me, is our ASTI tools. And I won't dive deep into it because I know there's going to be a future webinar about it. But basically the ASTI tools are some basic tools for enhancing Revit. And they are a renumbering tool, they're a change case tool, door and renumbering, door generator, parameters, and then this model medic basically gives you like a heartbeat of your project as an overall. So that's another tool tip. Like you're like, gosh, I need to renumber everything, or I need to do some really cool functionality. This tool will do that for you. And if you're a subscription customer with us, you get it for free, okay, which is great. And then I had some other slides that I'm just going to jump through it. The other one is this BIM Connect, which is basically another add-on tool. And I saw earlier, and I was kind of sneaking at some of the questions, but somebody asked about the shared parameters, exporting, can you go to Excel or something? This tool is specifically to take data from Revit, from your project, and pull that information out and put it into an Excel file, which is totally cool. So basically you say, I want to do door, I want to do windows, walls, whatever, and it'll actually put it out to an Excel file and then you can edit it out in Revit, which is, edit it outside of Revit, which is really cool. So those are my 8 big kind of tips. I did have some bonus tips in here. Maybe we'll have to save them for another time. Maybe I can just pick out maybe one of them. Why don't I just pick out one, maybe two? So, okay, this is a bonus tip. I know I don't have a whole lot of time. I'll be fast. But this is basically when you constrain a dimension, we can. There's a tool down in the bottom of your view in 17, 18 that'll actually allow you to display display or show constrained dimensions. So this is my floor plan. That's going to show up here in a second. Excuse me. If I click that button, it'll actually show me the dimensions or other objects that are constrained. It'll show them in red, because sometimes you're like, why is everything else moving? What is constrained? Why is this doing that? It's really frustrating. And then real quick, because this is super cool, and then we'll open up to some questions to some other things, is if you ever had like a door number or some tag like floating out in space and you're like, where is that? What does that go to? Like this one, this is 105A door. Is it door to the left, to the right, or somewhere I don't even know where it is? Well, with the tag picked, you can actually go up to the ribbon bar and say, select the host that's associated to this. And when you do that, it actually highlights that door or that object in blue. Now, it could be far away because maybe that tag got pulled out of the way. But again, my bonus tip, I thought it was really cool. Got the 8 in there, and I got 2 more thrown in there. So I want to open this up to some questions. I know we're really close on time. We got like 4 minutes, and I know some of y'all have to go. So let's Mark, if there's some questions that some folks had, be happy to answer those and address some of those. So
sure, I can. So
go ahead.
So Jaime was the one who asked that question about Excel, so we do appreciate you sending in. So hopefully you got an answer. Z answered that, but if not, you know, feel free to submit back in. Just one comment, somebody, the biggest challenges I thought was kind of funny, where they said was herding cats, and so other people had challenges out there. Let's see, looking at one, Brian asked this question, is Revit 2017, so 217.2.2, safe to update?
Well, you know, you never know. I mean, the updates, when they come out with updates, some people get leery and say, I'm going to wait a couple months to do the updates. Some people are like right on it. Obviously, those updates, especially the point updates, excuse me, are almost like a collection of hot fixes and updates and you know, patches, if you will, that, you know, they're releasing it, so it's supposed to be safe. You know, that's a bit of a loaded question. You know, if you're going from an old project and you're upgrading and that kind of stuff, you know, there's always a potential for it. But, you know, if there has been other problems with it, Autodesk will usually release a update to fix that update, and, you know, you could potentially roll back. But I've usually never come across the problem where the updates have issues or are corrupting what I have.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Charles has a great question here. What is the best way to deal with showing control/expansion joints in elevation views? They're easy to model, but show up too dark. Can line weight be controlled universally for reveal?
I mean, yeah, I mean, you can model them like I think what he was getting at and show that cut in there. A lot of times what we've done is add additional line work in the elevation, basically attached or aligned to and locked to those to give it that extra pop. Because an expansion joint or reveal on an 1/8 inch, 16 inch elevation on a big building is really hard to see. So adding that extra line, I know you might be like, oh, that's adding more models, you know, that's extra. But that is a way we found, like, hey, that really shows that. And then we throw a note down at the bottom, you know, control joint, reveal, whatever in the elevation. So that's at least what I've come across in the past. I don't know if it might be some deeper dive to look into creating that reveal in the cut of it or the line weight thickness of it, but I know that adding that line and attaching it has worked in the past.
So we have a lot of great questions here that have come in that we're not going to have time to address because we want to respect your time for the hour time limit. But I have Michael ask one last question here. Can BIM managers control desktop app update messages?
Well, when people have that installed locally, on their machine, they're getting those updates and they're getting that notification. A roundabout way of that is if they don't have that installed and they have the notifications disabled as the users, and just the BIM manager has those notifications, because some people aren't going to want to worry about it and say, oh my gosh, should I install this or shouldn't I? And that would be the concern of the BIM manager, that maybe across the board those notifications are turned off, and then just the BIM manager has it, and then he can decide to push that out and have people install it. So I don't think it's as complicated, or sophisticated, as maybe the word I'm looking for, but that might be the workaround to just have the BIM manager have the notifications.
Okay, again, so we got to cut it off here. We're here at 1:30 Eastern time, and we do have other questions. We'll try to get those offline. Z, any closing comments before I close out the webinar?
No, other than I would just say, if there's other topics or other things you all are interested in seeing, we're happy to put together a webinar related to that, and it may be even something that's very unique to your company, that it's very unique training or something. We'd be happy to kind of get into a conversation about that. But really, we want you all to succeed in Revit. There's a lot of really cool things out there that people don't know about, and that's the point of showing you stuff like this in the webinar. So hopefully you enjoyed it. I appreciate y'all's time very much, and trying to be sensitive and keep on track, but really enjoy sharing this kind of stuff with you all.